Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have our monthly Borough Council meeting using the Zoom platform. We are glad you have joined us virtually for this meeting. Participants attending tonight's virtual meeting via live stream may provide public comment during the public participation and public hearing portions of the meeting. Your comment will be received and read aloud. Your comment will be received and read aloud by a staff member so that all of council can hear the question. Participants must log in as a guest and provide their name and address via live stream chat in order to participate. Please note that there is approximately a 10-second delay when using the live stream chat. Information is on our website, Phoenixville.org, to both watch the video and make comments. Thank you again for joining us tonight, and we will now begin our September Borough Council meeting. And with that, we'll do a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Mr. Crack, if you'll please lead us in the roll call.
Ms. Berkeley.
Present.
Mr. Dalton. Ms. Dugan.
Here.
Mr. Kirkner.
Here.
Mr. Moore.
Here.
Mr. Soto.
Present.
Mr. Weiss.
Here.
Mr. Ewald.
Here.
Mayor Urschler.
Here.
Manager, assistant manager, lieutenant, and solicitor, here you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Crack. We will now move on to the approval of last month's meeting minutes. Are there any questions, amendments, or additions to the August 11th regular scheduled meeting minutes?
Mr. President, I'll move that we approve the August 11th, 2020 regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Soto, second by Ms. Berkeley. Questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No abstentions. Motion passes 7-0. I do not believe we have any presentations tonight. Is that correct, Mr. Crack?
That is correct, and you have a full quorum as Mr. Dalton has joined now too.
Very good. With that, we will open the first round of public participation. As I just mentioned in our introduction, information is available on the website for how to make public comments. Phoenixville.org. You can both watch the council meeting and take part with the chat feature. With that, I will give a moment of delay here to see if any comments do come in, which will then be read aloud by staff members. Any comments coming through?
Yes, I have one from Ginger Murphy, a resident of Church Street. She's very concerned about impact of Bridge Street traffic detour on residential streets. What measures is council taking to mitigate the impact at this time?
Okay. Any other comments tonight?
Nothing else at this time, Mr. Ewald.
Okay. I think perhaps under police personnel, we can provide an update if Mr. Cracker, Ms. Sketsreed would like to give an update on the Church Street or Bridge Street closure with how we are handling some of the mitigation issues. If that's all right. So if there's no other public participation at this time, we'll close the first round of public participation. And now, is there any communications or council participation?
Nothing at this time.
All right. With that, Mr. Urschler, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. And thank you especially to all of those at home who have joined us virtually as we continue onward with the business of the Borough of Phoenixville. Just a couple of things to update you on. Of course, we don't have nearly as many updates as we would during a traditional time period, but I did want to give everyone an update on our numbers here within the Borough of Phoenixville and let you know that we do continuously watch, myself along with our borough staff and our borough administration, we continuously watch all of our numbers that we have here along with the Chester County Health Department. Within the last 30 days, we've only had 11 positive tests, which we feel very fortunate. We are moving in the right direction. 3 months ago, we were seeing 25 new tests within a 30-day period. And so for us to have moved over a 3-month period to have just 11 in the last 30 days, we're doing very well. I would say that's due in large part to all of you and the efforts that you're taking, including mask wearing, social distancing, and of course, just the basic sanitation pieces. I will tell you that as I looked at the numbers today, that this is not necessarily the trend around Chester County. And so we need to ensure that everyone is continuing to do that great work, which helps to keep Phoenixville open and keep all of our restaurants and businesses that we have here in the community open and safe and healthy. So thank you very much for doing that. I also want to thank all of the organizations that are out there. I apologize, I don't have an exhaustive list, but I know a number of organizations have been very creative over these last couple of months to find ways to really connect people, even though we are unfortunately apart. Specifically, I know we have Kiwanis is actually on the 26th. They are continuing to do their chicken barbecue. It's going to be completely socially distant. And for those who would like to purchase a meal, it is actually going to be in a drive-through format at Forestas. So if you would like to participate in that and help raise some money for the wonderful events that Kiwanis does for children in our community, normally you can go and visit Forestas and they'll have additional information about that. I went to a barbecue last weekend at St. Mary's, same thing. It was a great little barbecue drive-through. I drove up, they put the food in my trunk, so I didn't even come into contact with anyone, but it was a great way to help to continue to support some of the great organizations we have. Again, one of the families that we had, and I know this was some conversation during our last meeting, but I wanted to give a special shout out to my friend Finn, who came up with a socially distant catapult competition for his neighbors over on Melvin Street. So great job, Finn. It was all very well done. It was all socially distant and the catapults worked very well. And you need a lot of social distance when catapulting because these things fire beanbags very far, a lot farther than I expected. All of our students also here in the borough, regardless of which school you go to, I just want to wish you and hope that you're having a good start to your year. I know a number of our schools began a couple of weeks ago. We also had some that began this last week. So great job, students. I know it's not the typical year that you're used to, but thank you so much for being flexible. And always remember, it's not your responsibility to worry. If you do have questions or concerns, make sure that you're talking to your parents or to your family and to your teachers about that. So don't worry about it. We've got you. I also want to thank everyone in our community for the incredible work that they've been doing through advocacy. We have seen some of the great work with our USDA waivers, which did get extended. We did also see the CDC came through with a moratorium on foreclosures and rental evictions. So thank you very much for those of you who have been advocating for that, as well as the governor's continued emergency declaration, which ensures that we can do a number of programs, even around special types of meetings that we're able to do still remotely, as well as the extension of our restaurants' liquor licenses. Speaking of restaurants, we have gotten word today, and we're still trying to understand it on behalf of our businesses, but we will be moving to approximately 50% capacity for some restaurants that wish to apply to be a certified restaurant. They have the opportunity to do so. And that process begins on the 21st of September. And restaurants that opt into this program will have the option and the ability to actually extend their indoor dining to approximately 50%, following some very specific guidelines. So as we find out more information, make sure that you are tuning in to the Borough website, you're tuning into our Facebook, the Borough Facebook, because that's where we put out a lot of this great information, not only if you're a business owner, but of course, if you are a member of the public who likes to frequent any of our places downtown. Thank you to our Congresswoman, Chrissy Houlihan, for visiting us last week. She came to have a very a very in-depth conversation with our law enforcement, our police department here in Phoenixville, as well as visit some of our small businesses and just make sure that they're doing well during this difficult time. As many of you may have seen, if you've been on the 100, 200, 300 block of Phoenixville, we have both gold and silver ribbons on our lamp posts this month. And so I just wanted to let you know what those are for. First of all, the silver is actually for senior citizens. So this is a designated Senior Citizens Month where we celebrate all of our seniors. And those were put up by Joanne McCracken and Julie Godin from the Phoenixville Area Senior Center. So thank you to both of them and the great work that they've done, especially to ensure seniors still feel connected and they still get the resources that they need in a safe and healthy way. So that's the silver ribbon, and the gold ribbon is actually for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. So unfortunately, September is also Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. It's something that we definitely need to continue to watch and help to support causes so that we can eradicate cancer, not only from children, but throughout our communities. And finally, if you or anybody you know, if you have friends, relatives, anybody in the borough of Phoenixville or in the immediate surrounding area who may need help, especially as a lot of these different policies and programs change, make sure that you're visiting inthistogetherpxv.com. Again, inthistogetherpxv.com. We have lots of great resources there, and we have a lot of resources in this community, and we want to make sure that everyone is safe, healthy, and taken care of. So keep up the great work, keep those masks up, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for helping keep Phoenixville open. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that, we will move on to our next agenda item, appointments and public resolutions. Every month we make a call out for residents of the borough to step up and take part in our local government. Currently, we have 4 openings on various boards and committees, with an action later tonight expected to create a 5th vacancy. But should you be interested in joining any of our boards or committees right now, we have a rec board, beautification, human relations, and civil service vacancies. So, well, one of those is a renewal, but anyway, there's a number of ways to get involved. If you're interested, reach out to borough management, borough staff, or your council person. We'd be happy to point you in the right direction. Moving on to new business tonight, item A under 9A, we have consideration of appointing council president and borough manager as members of the Steel Point Neighborhood Improvement District Management Association. This is something that is not only new to the borough, but there's not a lot of NIDs in the region. So I was hoping that Mr. Crack could give some background on this and the benefits and reasoning for borough representation on the NID. Unlike some of the other processes that we go through, this is not one that we get to see very often.
Sure. In the packet, there was a copy of the proposed NID management agreement. The solicitor and I are still going through all of the various documents. I think there's somewhere to the order of 6 or 7 of those that are part of the overall neighborhood improvement district package. The key thing is that the bond portion of that has moved forward, and basically it allowed all of the plans to be filed for Steel Point. What this agreement does is it puts us on the board or on the team that implements the process of collecting the special tax later on as that becomes applicable. There's some components in there. There's some discussion about the borough being able to recoup any fees that are incurred and what have you. I have talked with the only other NID in Chester County, which is in, I believe it's in East Goshen, might be West Goshen. And basically the taxes are collected through an automatic process, and the manager there really hasn't done anything, nor has the chairman of the supervisors there. But it's the agreement still allows us to have a say so and a seat on that board. So it's more or less automatic in the way it handles things, but to give us, because we created the neighborhood improvement district, we get a seat on the team. I don't know if the solicitor has any other input that he wants to add to that, but that's the general gist of what the agreement is.
Yes, and you, when you approved the ordinance back in June, you essentially provided the authority to create the NID district, the NID Management Association, as well as the NID plan. So this is the first step in moving this forward, creating the board that oversees the district. And as Jean said, you have 2 seats at this table. It doesn't appear to be anything that's going to be overly burdensome for the borough in any way. Ultimately, a manager or administrator will be hired by the Management Association to administer this. There's going to be essentially Keystone serving as the collection entity to collect the assessments. So this is really just pro forma in getting your seat at the table and allowing the manager and the borough council president to participate in these association meetings, which I'm told are not very frequent. So.
Any questions from council on this item under new business?
Yes,
Mr. Kirkner.
Mr. President, thank you. And you and I had a discussion about this afternoon. And, you know, as I read this agreement more, you know, I do realize this is an entity that derives its existence from the borough itself. I would ask if the other NID in Chester County has a similar board structure, and how many board members are we talking about here?
My recollection, Mr. Kirkner, in the plan indicated 5. So there's 2 borough representatives and 3 others that would be appointed as part of the district or the association.
I believe the Chester County Economic Development Council has a seat at that, since they're the entity providing the bonds. So I believe in the context, the HOA has one, the Economic Development Council has one, we have 2, and forgive me, but I don't remember what the 5th one is. To answer the former question, my understanding from talking to the manager there, they've been up and running. I think they're starting their 3rd year, and they meet once a year, basically as a requirement of their what we call their bylaws. But again, to what the solicitor had indicated, the tax collecting agency in this case would not be the borough; it would be Keystone, which is the same entity that collects our earned income tax and our local services tax.
And Mr. Kirkner, all of these agreements were modeled after the township that has the other NID. So everybody's following the same model, so to speak.
Any other questions from council on this item? Seeing none,
I just have one, just
yes,
to understand, having read the documents when we approved the district, you know, a little bit more detailed than this one. Do we participate in the selection of some of the professional entities, such as, I believe there's an accounting firm that does an audit and so forth? Is that part of the vote that we have? Or is
The Management Association, this board will participate and make those decisions.
okay?
Mr. President, I do have a question.
yes, Mr. Weiss.
Is there any obligation for the folks that would be representing on this board to be in alignment with Borough Council? Like, would you have to bring anything back to the council to discuss? Could you work against the council? Not that I would anticipate that, but just out of curiosity.
I don't believe, in answer to that question, I don't believe because the NID is sort of self-policing, and the bonds that have been drawn or will be drawn are directly associated with that HOA moving forward from this point, there really is no further borough action, because the actions that would occur short of pulling, I guess, and the solicitor can correct me on this, short of if we had to pull a full-blown lien for some reason on this. Short of that, I don't believe there's any other action by council moving forward, nor would there be any conflicts between any manager or any president of council.
Awesome. Thanks for that confirmation. I appreciate it.
And what is council's pleasure for this action item?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to appoint the council president and borough manager as members of the Steel Point Neighborhood Improvement District Management Association.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Berkeley, second by Mr. Weiss. Questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes 8-0. Very good. Next up on our agenda, we have a review of a ZHB application for 209 Fillmore. Mr. Crack, is there an update on this application or
Yes,
staff
there is,
recommendation?
as you may recall, I believe it was either in July or August. I believe it was July, actually. We, council made a motion based on staff's recommendation to send representation to the zoning hearing board because there was an appeal of the zoning officer's decision. And as you would expect, we want to support our zoning officer in any of those decisions. So council approved moving forward with that. Subsequently, there has been a dialogue between the solicitor, myself, the zone officer, and the applicant and their attorney on this topic. And at this juncture, the applicant is willing to remove the appeal in favor of just going before the zoning hearing board for a variance on the parking requirements. And as you know, over the past several years, we typically let the zoning hearing board run its course on those what would be perceived as smaller matters. Having said that, council can still choose to send representation. They can choose not to take a position, or they can look favorably upon the variance itself. I think our position has always been to stay neutral and just let the zoning hearing board do its job. Mr. Solicitor, that your understanding as well?
Yeah, just one thing. I guess the thing that you're seeing differently is the amended application seeking a variance. They're looking for that relief in the alternative. They have not withdrawn their appeal from the zoning officer's determination. And from a legal standpoint, I would always recommend that you support your zoning officer, because if the zoning hearing board finds something different, that becomes precedent in the future. But in a variance situation, if the zoning hearing board chose to grant the variance, as you know, that is non-precedent setting. That's based on the facts of every case. And merely because they grant this applicant a variance doesn't mean everyone with the same factual circumstances would be granted a variance. So I guess our recommendation is typically you do not take a position on a variance request, and we just brought it to your attention to make sure you agree with that determination. And I hope I didn't confuse you more by that explanation.
So do we have an action to take, or do we have an action to take no action?
If you choose to let the zoning hearing board simply rule on the variance, there's no action for you to take. If you choose to oppose the variance, there'd be action. If you choose to support the variance, there'd be action. Typically, you don't do that.
Any questions from council on this item, which is thoroughly, slightly confusing?
So with the application, or should I say the appeal, not being rescinded, is that still
Yes,
part of this process then? Does
We-
action need to be taken from, or I guess that's just going through the appeal process in general, but that's not part of this variance.
correct. You're still opposing the appeal from the zoning officer's determination. So we're still a party in that proceeding. The question is, do you care if a variance is granted? This is just an alternate way to get relief. Same result, but a different way to do that.
Understood. Thank you.
And with that, does council wish to take any action on this item tonight? Or have any further questions? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, we'll move on to item C, which is the Civil Service Commission's recommended changes to their rules and regulations. So since the Civil Service is a committee of under council, we have to approve their changes. Is that?
That's
we have to
per the
adopt?
borough code, yes.
Okay.
You ratify what the changes are.
Any questions from council on the changes the Civil Service has made to their rules and regulations?
Yes. Can someone explain to me what sections have been adjusted within the
What's new?
rules or yeah?
Should we get a motion first and then have
Sure.
dialogue?
I'll move to adopt the new Civil Service Commission's recommended changes to the rules and regulations
Second.
adopted September 1st.
Sorry, second.
We have a motion by Mr. Soto, second by Ms. Berkeley. Questions on the motion?
Sure.
Mr. Weiss. Mr. Crack.
Sure. In answer to Mr. Weiss's question, there were several changes as it relates to some of the rules, specifically some age requirements, with the police department. But probably the most significant change is that we added an entire section for fire because, as you know, we're heading in that direction. We didn't want to have to spend twice on the same product. So we tasked, and took about, I'd say 15 months to pull together a section as it relates to police, and then a section which pretty much mirrors the police, but then has different things to look at, such as background investigations and the sort. But upon your approval, when they pull the final vote, the final signatures on their side, we will have a complete civil service regs. And at that point, it's probably where the solicitor and I are going to have to sit down and take a look at our fire and police ordinances to make sure that they're consistent with what the new civil service regs are. So this is the first step of probably 2 to 3 additional steps that we're going to have to take.
Thanks.
Any other questions from council on the, Mr. Kirchner?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I have 3 questions, I think, about some specific sections in the document. Section 3.3, which is on page 7. It talks about application forms may be mailed upon written, email, or telephone request. I think at some point we need to make a provision for when these applications go online. I'm assuming that forms may be mailed means the U.S. Postal Service. And while these may be the last jobs in the world where you actually apply in writing, I would think at some point there's going to be some type of online portal for accepting those applications. And not only that, having a portal like that would also enable us to cast a wider net for candidates as well. So that may be something we look at down the line in revisions for the civil service rules and regs, but I think that's something we need to bear in mind.
The big issue, Mr. Kirchner, is that The forms, many of the forms have to be done, have to be notarized. So until notarization can occur online, we still mail them, have them fill them out, and then they have to come in and do that. But to your point, we should be open-minded for the long term, because eventually there's a probability that notarization may occur online too.
Okay. I appreciate that. And right under that, section 3.4, residency requirements, it says right now reside within 25 miles of the perimeter of the borough. You know, I wouldn't mind titrating that down to about 15 miles, but that may be an executive session issue.
Well, it also comes into play how the contractual language that we have with the collective bargaining unit, that also, they're consistent. And so I'm not sure which is the chicken or which is the egg in this case, but we'd have to get the contract worked out so that we don't have one negatively affect the other document. So that's a two-pronged approach.
Yeah,
but to your point,
that's something you'd have to bargain. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that. And my last comment, if I can get it here, on page 21, grounds for disciplinary action. I looked at those items, and as I'm sure we're all aware, there have been incidents at other police departments in the region where department employees posted things online that were considered objectionable. And I just want to make sure that the language we have here gives us the flexibility to deal with those types of situations where we're dealing with social media posts. And that may be more of a hypothetical question than a literal one, but I trust that the folks who went through this document saw there was flexibility in that.
Mr. Kirkner, I can respond to that. Those are the exact language that's contained in the Borough Code for exactly what an officer can be disciplined for. So they are general provisions, and they can be, obviously what you said can come under any of those, or potentially any of those ones, like sub D. That's a pretty general one. So
Thank you.
You won't want to add anything else to this section. Okay. Maybe in your policy manual in the police department, you may want to look at your discipline, but again, that's probably subject to bargaining as well.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. President.
Absolutely. Ms. Dugan.
Question. It was the 3.4 section 2 with the residency requirements. I really don't like the idea that we let, I feel like every police officer is better in town. Like they're better with residents if they also are part of the town and live here and pay taxes here. And I don't know how that goes with the contract negotiations, you know, like, I don't know how that works with the police based on what we have already, but if we're just starting this and we have a thought in our head about fire, shouldn't we cut that off early and be like, no, we want you a lot closer? It's something that kind of bothers me. So this 25-mile thing is, I don't like it, especially when we might have something else starting up. So I don't know where the appropriate time for that conversation is, but you know, I just feel like people in those positions should be residents of the borough.
That's a good comment, particularly if, you know, since fire hasn't, you know, there is not any ground rules on fire yet, as far as I know. So
yeah, we don't have anything we have to overcome yet.
Right.
There's no CBA for fire yet. So
is that something that would be better done on that level and then go from there? Or since this has already been adopted by the Civil Service Commission.
I would suggest you send that comment back to the Civil Service Commission for them to consider revising that.
I would
But-
really, I would like that.
It shouldn't stop
Any
you
other
from voting tonight, though, on this.
So we can still vote, we just don't, we're just gonna look at revising that maybe.
That would be my suggestion. You kind of want to get this in place and ask the Civil Service Commission to look at what you're suggesting as far as another change. They can change it pretty easily.
But doesn't that go back to, like, you were saying you wanted to do everything all at the same time, so we don't have to go back and do this? So it's kind of, I feel like we're doing exactly the opposite, that we're going to go ahead and improve it and still make the changes.
I'll defer to Gene as to the time sensitivity of this, Gene.
There really is no time sensitivity at the moment because, quite frankly, we're not in the position of moving forward with any of the lists, whether it be advancement or whether it be recruiting. So we could send this back for a review for their October meeting and get it back to you with any answers or changes for your October 13th meeting.
Is that possible? I think that would be best. Could
Dana,
we
I
table
think
this?
if we do that, I mean, what we don't, maybe it's just me, but I feel like get a really clear description or guidance on what we would like for them to change, as opposed to maybe just saying the Phoenixville is in 25 miles. Is there a recommendation that we're making from our
I prefer for
perspective?
them to live in town, but I don't get everything I want, so I'm willing to put it at a smaller radius, but.
Just for clarification, Chuck, this would theoretically apply only to the uniform, the police, and then potentially the fire department. This wouldn't apply to other employees.
Correct. This is only police and fire. And right now, you can change the civil service rules to say the distance of residency wouldn't apply to police because you're governed by a collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
What I think Dana is referring to is having the rules specifically indicate for fire, they live closer to the borough borders. I don't know what that number is, but right now you don't have a CBA, you have no
Right.
agreement. So now would be the time to put it in your rules that ultimately an agreement would line up with what your rules say. But it wouldn't, whatever you do now doesn't impact the police. So I think this would basically be the fire department.
Because
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Paul.
I'm a little concerned. I mean, 25 is an interesting radius. I'm a little concerned that, our ability, I have no idea how ultimately we will staff this department under a CBA. But I'm a little concerned that we would, if we go that tight or if we go resident only, we would be setting some kind of precedent that, the firefighters are, the police department isn't, and that kind of thing. And and also our ability to attract, qualified people by locking it into the borough. It's a thing that we ought to ask ourselves from.
I will say that I'm less concerned about it for the fire department than I am currently about the police department, but I don't want to get into this problem that we're having right now with the fire department when we eventually move in that direction. And if that time comes, I mean, I think, we could discuss, this requires more conversation about how far what the radius should be, but I mean, I don't know. I just feel like policing is best done in towns that all the people there and you're accountable to those people directly because they're your neighbors.
Is there any data available that supports that? Like, it feels right, but like, are there reports that we have access to, or anything that anybody on the council has seen that would suggest that more local police provide a better service to the community?
I guess I'm not dissuading this council from one way or another. I'm not sure that this council is like, any of us are in the position to understand how recruitment is regional from police and or fire. I mean, I could be wrong here. I think that's why we're asking the questions. What's better? Is it better to have people who are hyper local, or is it better to look for people who are talented outside of our region, right? Like there's a potential, I'm sure there are pros and cons to both of those.
Or have a
approaches.
balance of both making up an entire department.
Right. I mean, so, I guess the way that I feel about this particular motion on the floor is that we have what we know what we cannot change from the police department side, and we don't really have a good enough guidance from, I think, to have that recruitment knowledge to change one way or another. But it's a conversation that we can start talking about in general, maybe move this forward and still have that dialogue and those comments to the Civil Service Commission to talk about revisions if should we need to do that, but maybe we have to have a bigger conversation, to your point, Ms. Dugan.
Is the Civil Service Commission, would they be someone who, would it be part of their responsibility or scope of duty to investigate this question if we send it back to them and perhaps find an answer to Brian Weiss's question, or is that something we'd be asking them to do outside of the scope of their responsibilities?
Well,
I
that would
think
go
that
to the
feels
labor
pretty
law,
appropriate.
right?
I think it's a fair question to send back. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why the police officers prefer to live outside of the town. I think you could all clearly guess what those reasons would be. But, at the end of the day, at least with the police department, with the collective bargaining agreement, we already have a defined number. And as you also know, getting things changed in agreements is extraordinarily difficult. And I'm not sure if there's a part of me that says we're almost potentially shooting ourselves in the foot by limiting the scope of where people can live as opposed to where they want to work. I think you're reducing your circle if you get too close to the border of the town. That's my opinion, and that's based on everything that I know about all of the communities around us. So it's, candidly, I think it's a little bit of an overreach. Being honest with you, you're trying to get persons to sign up for work in the borough, and you know that over the last dozen years, it's been difficult to get good lists. And the more we do to limit even getting those good lists, it's just going to reduce the recruiting factor. Notwithstanding juxtaposition of a civil service regulation versus a collective bargaining agreement. We can send it back to them and try to get an answer. I would just, to Edwin's earlier comment, I would like to have, what is your parameter? Is it 20? Is it 15? Is it 10?
Well, to give a little, Mr. Crack, to give a little background, this was compiled and written by the labor law attorneys, correct? This wasn't written by our Civil Service Commission. So this is researched and.
Well, I wouldn't give it a reach as to labor law specific, but the attorney wrote this, not the Civil Service Commission.
Right. So legal opinion was, and research was done comparing other ordinances or other rules and regulations and matching them up. So I imagine this is probably the current method of thinking for most municipalities that have a Civil Service Commission that have updated the rules and regulations.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to have that provision in there, or to really be silent on the issue. So.
So is there we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there council desire to send this back or move forward with, is there a parameter to which we'd like to ask more questions of?
As I put the motion on there. I think that we don't have enough guidance to go to send back a research response to the Civil Service Commission, and therefore I think we have to take this recommendation as is.
Don't we have a requirement for AFSCME employees?
I don't believe we have a requirement for AFSCME employees.
It just seems like
I don't believe
everybody.
we have in fact, I'm almost confident we don't have a residency requirement at any level that I can recall having them vote.
Outside of police, yeah.
I guess everybody just lives in town.
Yeah, Mr. President, if I may, I think at this
Yes.
point, it's probably best we move this on. And, with regard to the police requirement, that's, I'm not going to say that's cast in stone, but it is in print. It's in the collective bargaining agreement. We're not going to change that tonight, and we're not going to change it by sending it back to the Civil Service Commission.
What about the firehouse though?
With regard to the fire requirement, I think this can go through with that, because at some point, I would think before we hire firefighters, we're going to hire a fire chief. And then at that point, we can get input from the fire chief on setting parameters.
Okay, so
for
we could
fire.
always change this later,
fires.
I guess, at that
Yeah.
point.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, whatever then.
Any other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Rich, were you yay or nay?
Sorry. I'm a yay.
Okay,
Sorry.
sorry,
I
there's a
raised my
delay
hand
there.
late.
So motion passes 8-0. Moving on with the agenda tonight, our last item under new business, we have our annual boroughs. Well, what is council's pleasure regarding the chemical bids?
Mr.
Mr.
President, I'll
President, I
make
make a motion that we award the 2021 chemical bids as noted in the action memo from the borough manager, action memo dated September 4, 2020.
second.
We have a motion by Mr. Kirkner, second by Mr. Soto, regarding the annual chemical bids. Any questions on this year's bid sheet? Nobody
Yes,
ever wants to sell us brine salt.
yeah, Mr. President, I did have a question.
Yes.
Just really a point of clarification. In looking at Exhibit A in the board packet that we received, the final page that was a copy of a spreadsheet that summarized the bids, I just wanted to confirm that it was a typo, or to maybe see where I'm not understanding. The fifth item on there, the hydrated lime, it looks like there's a mismatch between the unit price and the total bid amount, making the total bid amount not the lowest for that item. So I wanted to gut check it to see if I'm reading that right and to see if it is a typo.
The line should be, the low bid should be $500. And I forget what company it was, but it was for one 10-ton lot of lime.
I have here Coin Chemical for $591.76.
Well, then I apologize.
Yeah.
It should be $500.
Okay. The piece that's actually causing me confusion is under Lane Reading, I guess, or Lane Reading. The unit price is $606.40, but the total bid here reflected is $2,425, which would be the lowest bid were it correct, but the two of those aren't in sync, that unit price and then the total. So I just wanted to confirm, and if we are comfortable that the lowest bid is the Coin Chemical, then that's totally fine by me. I just wanted to confirm that before voting.
If I highlighted 591, I think the lowest bid was $500. I'll have to go back and check it.
Was it the same? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's only
the
two
question
bids,
is
so
just a
that's
second.
the one.
Yep.
Good question.
Again, the unit prices, that is the lower of the two unit prices, so I'm totally willing to vote on it tonight, assuming that that was the lowest.
And if there's a discrepancy, we always go by the unit number,
Okay,
not
Great.
not the extended price.
awesome.
Got it. Any other questions on the this year's chemical bids? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes 8-0. Thank you very much. Moving on with our agenda. That's my place. We do have two resolutions tonight. What is council's pleasure regarding item 10A?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to consider a resolution authorizing the signing of all documents required in the PennDOT Master Casting Agreement for adjustments of incorporated utility facilities 2020 through 2029.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Weiss. I heard Ms. Berkeley first, so she gets a second. Any questions on the motion? So more exciting sounding title than actual resolution. Just sounds cooler, but any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes 8-0. And what is council's pleasure regarding 10B?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution providing for the temporary outdoor sales of food and merchandise of existing businesses in accordance with the yellow phase of Governor Tom Wolf's plan reopening the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in response to the COVID-19 emergency.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Kirkner. And then Mr. Craig, if you can give us some more background in terms of just just an update on this process.
Sure. Currently, as you know, the original agreement, the original resolution of June had basically a cut date of 5 October, barring any other decisions by council. But your next council meeting is the 13th. So as you saw in the surveys and some of the other information, there is a desire to continue going beyond the 5 October weekend date. What this resolution does is it allows, council is allowing the extension of this until one of two things occurs. Either there's an agreement by the mayor, president, council, and myself that we've reached the pinnacle of what this has served. The weather's too cold, whatever the reason, or if council makes its own decision, whichever occurs first. So that's what this does. It allows us to keep going. Weather probably being the primary factor, but at least it doesn't require a special council meeting to pull the trigger on this. You've given the mayor, Mr. Ewald, and myself the ability to meet and discuss and make that decision.
Yeah, did I maybe offer the wrong resolution? Should I have been giving the resolution on page 136 of the packet?
We sent out an update earlier, I think either late this morning or early this afternoon with the revised resolution. The revised resolution has two, now there are 4 items.
Okay.
This basically it extend item 1 says it extends it beyond October 5th, and 2, I'll just read that, authorizes by agreement of the mayor, president, council, and borough manager to cancel the temporary outdoor sales of food and merchandising, or until further action of Phoenixville Borough Council, whichever shall come first.
Thank you, Gene. Any questions or comments from council on this measure? We're still at it, so As council can see, the survey results have been very positive from our Bridge Street merchants in keeping this going. And without knowing what the weather's going to be, it seemed like this was the best case way of approaching the next few months.
The only comment I'll offer in recognition of the comment from the person in the public at the opening of council is what other steps are we taking in conjunction with extending this to address the traffic issues on Church Street?
Sure, this is as good a time as any to answer that, right?
Sure. As indicated, the police they have increased their presence. They're monitoring the area around Church Street, Gay, and Main, etc. We have ordered, I haven't received yet to my knowledge, but have ordered the additional speed bumps, temporary speed bumps. And through the assistance of, well, actually all the work of Mr. Ewald, we now have PennDOT approving signage on you see them out on 113 and out on 23. I don't know if we'll make it up to 422, but we notify PennDOT. They will automate those signs to reflect that during this time frame there is activity in the downtown of the borough, and that Bridge Street is closed during this time frame. So a lot of the major truck traffic wouldn't come into Bridge Street and then try to go across Church Street. They would be more inclined to go Nut Road out to Main and then come across and pick up Star and come back down, and vice versa. That would eliminate a lot of the truck traffic. The additional thing we're trying to work with the Steel Point project to eliminate deliveries of certain materials that require triaxles on that Thursday and that Friday. Short of that, I'm not sure what else that we can do. We've put in some additional cones to prevent people from parking up against the corners. That's really more to give flexibility for the fire trucks and emergency services vehicles to get around the corners and the tightness of Church Street and Gay and Church Street and Main. But those are the primary things we've done. Ms. Getfried has additional comment.
Yeah, I just talking with some of the downtown businesses, we've been trying to be as open with our communication of the needs for them as much as possible. We first put out curbside signage. We then talked through it with them because some of the Uber Eats and different organizations that also need those type of spaces. So we actually changed signage from that perspective. I know that the mayor has also helped with, hand sanitizing stations. So I mean, we've tried from the perspective of what the businesses need, as well as what the residents are saying within the survey responses that we've gotten. I will say I think we got a pretty good response from the residents and from the businesses that we put out. I think there were some really good, honest answers and some things that we're going to look at, but nothing major that would change the course of how we're doing things. Just little tweaks, and we hope to keep that communication open here until the end. Anytime that anyone has a question or a concern, we try to make sure that we address it as quickly and as fast as possible.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I just, to add on to both Mr. Crack and Ms. Getfried, we are in constant communication regarding any of the feedback that we receive from the businesses or the residents themselves. And, there are a lot of pieces that we have tweaked along the way, but for many of our businesses and kind of as even the update that we've received from the governor, we're not going back to any type of what we would have considered normal for quite a long time. And so for a number of our businesses, this has been the lifeline that they've needed to basically save themselves. And so I would just encourage all of you to take that into consideration. I would say that it is a challenge, certainly, because we have had to reroute traffic and traffic has become more congested, but also we have now that the Main Street Bridge has been reopened, and the Low Bridge has been lifted and finally reopened. I think that it's really helped in the downtown to move that traffic and that flow. But it's something that the police are constantly monitoring, and we're doing additional traffic enforcement wherever we get tips. People call me every week to give me a new tip of where any place can be, and we send out enforcement to those locations. So thank you very much.
And I would just say, being a resident within the middle ward and one of the representatives for the middle ward, a lot of feedback comes to me as well. And I know I'm very conscientious of, being around town, walking around different sections, observing myself and taking any feedback that I get from residents very quickly. And there have been a few things, and I've taken them to, even at like 2 o'clock on a Saturday when I've noticed something, I've reached out to the mayor and we quickly resolved it. I know for the most part, the businesses have given us a positive feedback that was very evident in the data that we have from the surveys. And whenever there's been an issue, like for instance, like a delivery issue for a business, we've been able to case by case work that out and work with the business. So I think, again, just kind of wanting to echo that, is it always perfect? And are there things that we've had to tweak? Yes, but the overall data and response we're getting is positive. So I think we, again, continue to, even when there are serious concerns, I know there's been some safety concerns, we just take those as a case by case basis, and we work quickly to mediate them as we have been.
The only thing I'll add to this is, as evidence tonight, we're already losing daylight every day. So there will be some seasonal changes that will affect the sort of the level of activity. And I think it will continue to sort of keep a temper to it.
Also, not to get too far down a rabbit hole, there is also going to be some changes at a state level that are going to put some time limits on things. And I think, to your point, Mr. Ewald, with that, and also the natural fall and time change, that will help.
Any other questions or comments from council on this motion? Mr. Soto.
Yeah, I guess two things kind of came to mind as we were discussing, and it was just like how we handle comments and feedback depending on where it's coming from and what the issue is. And maybe like two things that come to mind as we were kind of talking about this. Sounds like maybe like some more immediate issues, like if it concerns something like immediate traffic or whatever. The mayor is handling some of those from that perspective, but what is the best way for potentially for residents to report those kinds of issues more ad hoc like that? And maybe on the less urgent side of things, like if businesses or have questions, or residents have questions, what is the best avenue for them to come into contact with the borough, to address some of those questions? I'm sure the businesses are a little less likely, considering that they're kind of in the thick of it every day. But potentially questions may still arise, to one of us. So, is there clarification around those two topics?
I can speak to that. So when filling out the temporary open air permit and all of the rules and regulations, we have an entire page dedicated to all of this, and any changes or anything would happen on that page. For the businesses, we have emails that go out. We will sometimes, every week or every other week, just do a tips of like, hey, just keep this in mind because we've heard these kind of things happening. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us. So we've definitely tried to keep it as open as possible. Any comments that we see on Facebook or on any of our, social media platforms where we put out these details, especially the road closures and timing or changes of any of those things, we will reach out to those individuals if they have if they have a concern that needs to be addressed right away. But again, it's through that website that web page has a really good information and has all of the maps and it has all of the guidelines. And we can even, look at that and reassess if we're missing any information. But I think that we've just have added on as we've gone. Because again, like Beth said, this is a moving, breathing, I don't want to say, but moving, breathing situation. We're always willing to change what needs to be changed from a safety perspective. And we've looked at those things and addressed them along the way. And any changes we do, we put them on that site.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 8-0. Okay, we now move on to the next section of the agenda. I don't believe we have any public hearings tonight. So we will move into reports from committees, boards, and commissions. Mr. Moore, if you'd like to lead us off with Planning Commission.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We have two resolutions tonight. The first one is a resolution of the Council of Borough of Phoenixville, Chester County, Pennsylvania, officially approving the final subdivision plans known as 417 South Street subdivision. This is a property on the north side for 417. It's being subdivided into 3 properties. 2 will be vacant pieces of land. 1 as the existing household will be in the 3rd property. No current plans to build any structures on it, but it did pass the Planning Commission 7-0. So I ask for this motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Soto. Questions on the motion?
Yes.
Mr. Kirkner.
Mr. President, if I may. First off, I'm thinking that it may be a matter for policy committee to consider putting signs on properties that are the subject of subdivision or land development plans, because this property, it's around the corner from my house. There's been no sign on it. So the people who live in that neighborhood have no idea that this single family home that's been a single family home, probably it's one of the oldest homes on the north side of town, with a fairly large lot, as a lot of the properties north of Emmett Street have fairly large lots on this side of town. I looked at the zoning ordinance. I'm trying to figure out how we got here, because I look at this plan, it shows 5-foot side yards on all 3 properties. On the 3rd property, it's a 10-foot side yard. You look at the zoning ordinance in this zoning district, the side yard requirement is 10-foot minimum. You look at the single family homes across the street, which are ranch homes. So this is a very eclectic mix we have on this block. We have this older single family house on the east side. Across the street on the west side, you have 3 or 4 ranch homes, and then a Cape Cod, all single family detached, all with side yards of about 12 feet conservatively, maybe 15, 20 feet. And then up the block, you have twins. Well, next to this property, there's a plan for 6 townhouses. Then on the other side of that, you have 2 twins. Then on the other side of that, you have townhouses as well. So it's kind of a real hodgepodge, but I'm trying to figure out how we got here, because the existing lot or the existing home would be on lot 2. And I'm seeing that would have a side yard of like 2 feet between the dwelling and the property line. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, well, one, I would like to see policy committee take up a policy on putting signs on properties that are the subject of subdivision and land development plans. I know there's a requirement for properties that are subjects of zoning hearings to be signed, to have signs, but not so much for this. But the state code doesn't prohibit that either. So, and secondly, I just can't figure out how they can put 3 homes on this property. They're talking 5-foot side yards, although like I said, the one is 2 foot. The southern side yard is 10 foot, which according to what I see in the zoning ordinance is the minimum. And so I'm just trying to figure out how they got from 10-foot minimum for single family detached dwelling to the 5 foot that they're talking about on this plan.
We do have, I believe, representatives from the development. So I would ask that their person address your comment, sir.
Yes, hi.
Well, if I may, I think my comment is more for the planning commission. I mean, how did the planning commission send this to us?
Well, if I may address it, I understand your concerns to the planning commission, but I think if I address your question, you may be able to see where the planning commission made its decision, because I'm not sure they're as familiar with the technicalities of what you're discussing as I am, if that's all right with you.
Yes.
Just be advised that I was on council when we wrote this zoning ordinance. I was on the committee that helped write the zoning ordinance. So
I understand. I'm certainly not trying to sneak anything past you. My name is Joel Commanda. I'm a civil engineer with Inland Design, and I'm responsible for these plans. In terms of the way that the side yards were determined, we're using the regulations in section 27-301, which refer to infill developments, lots less than 1 acre. And if you look at 27-301, 1A2, the lot, I'm sorry, 1A3, the side yard is based on the side yards present on the adjacent lots with a minimum of 5 feet, or that any 2 structures cannot be closer than 10 feet. So because of that, the 2 adjacent lots located to the south of this property both have existing structures that are less, I think the closest is, 0.8 maybe. They're less than the 5 feet minimum from the existing property line. So the 5-foot side yard was used as a minimum for all 3 lots, with the exception, as you noted, of lot 3, where a 10-foot side yard was used to guarantee that any proposed building would be at least that minimum of 10 feet from the existing buildings on those adjacent lots.
Thank you for explaining that.
And that is, that is spelled out in the zoning chart with some footnotes, if that's helpful.
And Mr. Kirkner, on your other question, I think it is a valid point to consider under policy, and I'll send that to Mr. Dalton to bring up under his agenda for signage requirements. In terms of the side yards, does that answer your question, Mr. Kirkner, on the side yards, or?
Well, I'll just leave it.
At least from his perspective. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
I'll just offer that I read the Remington Burnick report, both Remington Burnick and Ray Ott cited specifically that the infill requirements could be applied, and it was discussed, I believe, in Planning Commission. So it was applicable. So it's really a question maybe of looking at the infill zoning, but Rich, you said you were part of that.
Right, and we were also led to believe that and I specifically asked about existing lots being subdivided in this manner, and was led to believe that would not be the situation. But I'll just leave it at that. I do think that these small side yards, when you consider the character of the neighborhood across the street, it does it does change the character of the neighborhood. But then again, the neighborhood has a rather eclectic character, as I noted. You have just about every housing use there except garden apartments. And you also have a pigeon club. So try to find that anywhere else.
Okay, any other questions from council on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 6-2.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore, you have a second item tonight? You're on mute, Brian.
Thank you. Second, make a motion to approve a resolution of the Council of the Borough of Phoenixville officially approving the preliminary final subdivision and land development plan known as Bridge Street Residential East. This is the property, the vacant lot, the parking lot opposite Borough Hall, which the developer is proposing a multi-story apartment building with built-in parking. And this is a built-in parking for the residents, and would also include street level retail as well as the apartments. So that's the motion.
One second.
We have a motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Soto. Questions on the motion, Ms. Dugan?
As this isn't, how many people is this supposed to, how many apartments are we supposed to get out of this?
It is detailed. I would have to find it.
I feel like I read 32 somewhere.
Somewhere in the 30s, I believe.
Okay, this is another thing
32
that,
units.
okay, I've got a lot of comments on this. This isn't like a multiplex type of, multifamily home thing, like, some of the other ones that we've done recently. I think I asked about a year ago to have this set to policy. We were going to talk about changing our ordinance, our zoning, that we were going to allow all of these like big projects to come in with 30 some places, double the number for cars at least. And then you're adding pretty much a big traffic situation right across the street from Borough Hall. On top of that, have you looked at that? This building is institutional looking. It's absolutely terrible. Really? Are we gonna really let this happen? So that's my opinion on this. So obviously I'm gonna be a no here.
Good. Any other questions or comments from council on this motion or on this application?
Yes,
And this will be
Mr.
back in front of
President.
us under Harb, I believe, as well. Mr. Kirkner.
Yes, I did notice that the consultant on this plan is Barry Izett and Associates, and I know they also do consulting for the borough. And I just want to make sure there's no conflict with Barry Izett, because I may be mistaken, but I do think they do inspections
They
for the
do.
borough.
Mr. Crack can probably address that.
They do. I'm not exactly sure where actually, I'll ask Dave that question, but I believe Barry, I said, does the construction, only the construction inspection for all of the buildings, but I believe I think this maybe the first or second instance that they've come forward with the actual plan set where they're representing the client. So Dave, if you could.
Sure, and that's really all that this one is. So Barris and Associates, just like they did the environmental work on Steeltown Village. This is just the site work. So this is, the engineered plan for this. When it comes to building design, the building design is actually, at this point, is going to be Spiesel Architects. So nor do I even think they would have their own conflict of interest in designing something that they would have to review. It's literally something they cannot do under the UCC. However, in this case, they've designed the site work, and then it's up to Spiesel Architects to make the building work, to actually go to full design with it.
So IZET is going to do the inspections, construction inspections on this property?
They would do the construction inspections on the property, yes.
I think that's a conflict of interest if they're doing site inspections on properties of clients.
RVE would be doing Remington Vernick will do the site inspections of the work that was proposed by Barry Isett on the site. Spiesel will design the building and the architecturals, and Barry Isett will review those plans. So our engineer is going to review the site improvements, and then Barry Isett reviews the actual architecture, two completely different houses.
So Barry Isett is going to do work on behalf of the borough on this plan.
On the construction, if it ever gets to construction.
Construction.
Well, but I'm sorry. I think if
they're not inspecting their own plans.
No, I know, but the builder, the developer, has hired them for this project. So then they go in and they do this work, and then they come in and they do regulatory work. So that's I have a real problem with that. They shouldn't be involved in this plan on behalf of the borough in any way, shape, or form. If they want to take this kind of business, they shouldn't be representing the borough in these matters, period. I mean, I think that's very clear. And it disturbs me that they think they can take this work from this client and also Steel Point Village, and then they're going to come in and do work on our behalf on both of these properties. I mean, where does their loyalty lie? To whom does their loyalty lie? It's a pure and basic conflict.
Double dipping.
Mr. Kirkner, if I could make a comment, I'm not sure technically it is a legal conflict. Based upon your description, you believe it is a perceived or apparent conflict just based upon what you described. So the remedy, in my view, for that is the borough would need to set a policy that if you're going to be on the development side, you're not going to work for the borough on the borough side when it comes to these projects. But that to me is an internal policy the borough would have to make clear to its consultants if they wanted to do work for the borough or for a private developer. But that would be a borough policy in my view.
Well, Mr. President, if I may, thank you, Mr. Solicitor. You've given the policy committee more work to do, and I appreciate that. Secondly, I understand the distinction between legal conflict and perceived conflict, but I've always been of the school that a perceived conflict is a conflict nonetheless. And this is, I mean, it's a very basic question. If you're doing work for two different people involved in the same transaction, to whom does your loyalty lie?
I completely understand, Rich, and I think it should be reviewed in the policy committee. I don't know that it's something that can be, I don't know that it would come up at this point since for this specific motion, but I think going forward, this is certainly something that we can ask of our consultants, and our policy committee can review that proposal to see what restrictions our consultants should have when doing business in the borough. And I'm sure there's plenty of material out there that we can review from other municipalities and other counties to see what their, even PennDOT, to see what their rules are for this type of interaction. Any other questions or comments on this proposal? I saw that the waivers requested included the site triangles. I assume since this is HOP on a PennDOT road, that PennDOT would have to, or would PennDOT have any oversight on the site triangle requirements for those intersections? Mr. Crack.
Typically, PennDOT has the oversight on that, and so we typically defer to PennDOT when it's on a state road.
So is that a waiver that we can be granting if that's something that PennDOT ultimately has authority over?
Well, I think at the end of the day, PennDOT's going to say to us, as long as you're meeting your zoning requirements, that's your decision. As it comes to getting into the road, they'll have the HOP. I'm not exactly sure what pieces of that. I don't think they get into the nitty gritty of things like site triangles and what have you, unless it's a signalized intersection or an actual, signalized intersection. There's certainly enough. I mean, at the end of the day, they're asking for waivers. Waivers are a way if you, and I'm going into the weeds on this one, but you can certainly object to any one or all of those waivers. That's your prerogative.
Well, and I feel that on Bridge Street, the site triangles don't correlate well with the construction details of wanting a bridge street that is close to the sidewalks and our general design aesthetic. I'm assuming that's part of the decision. So I'm not fighting that. I'm just trying to make sure that this is one of the rare cases where we do have a development on a state road, and I didn't know where the rules lived.
Mr. President, don't confuse clear site triangles with site distance. I know you're not, but the requirement for the clear site triangles is within your subdivision ordinance. So they're asking for a waiver. And so that would be appropriate for you to grant or not grant. The issue of site distance, I guess, onto a PennDOT road would be a PennDOT issue to me, not being an engineer, but I think that's a separate issue as well.
Okay.
I'll offer that the original plan that we saw 3 months ago, I think, actually was a little bit more of an ambitious building that actually left over Prospect Street and would have, I think, cost us the current building where Stable 12 is, and would have had a very big, long blank, or an attempt at somewhat of a blank wall along that stretch of bridge. This condenses it, and also, it provides the opportunity for retail in that stretch. So begins to make a pathway from Gay down to where Stable 12 is and the appliance, and over to Bistro Dos. I mean, it's a piece part, and yeah, it's a kind of a big building, masses, and but it brings people in, and they're allowing their parking plan is somewhat challenging, and they were challenged a lot on it in terms of how it would actually work. But it seemed to satisfy the planning commission, and but they are asking for some waivers, so I guess that's part of our leverage.
Any further discussion or comment on this motion tonight? Okay. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Nay.
Okay.
Okay, motion passes 6-2. Anything else to report tonight, Mr. Moore?
Nothing of, those were the two most important things. Quite a number of other developments are continuing to be looked at Planning Commission, particularly on the north side, both the Odessa. There was a preliminary discussion of the tree development across Fillmore, but that was just a sketch plan. And then further, rather extensive discussion of the Odessa development. But that's it.
Ms. Dugan?
Mr. President, I'm sorry, I'm not exactly sure when to ask this question, but one of the major concerns that I have with all these developments now that he's telling us that are coming in, and I know that they're there, most of the people I talk to really are unhappy with the multifamily like complexes basically that we agreed to accept back in the day. I think I have asked this like seriously a year ago for us to like go back and like try to see if we can back out of that now, because we've gotten our fair share of this and it sounds like there's a lot more in the pipeline, and I'm getting a little bit nervous that this town is just going to turn into just, there's going to be no character left. It's just going to be a whole bunch of multifamily homes that are just these big complexes. And it concerns me. I thought that we were going to go back and take a look at this or see if we could change it. But like I said, it was probably like a year ago now, and it doesn't seem like anything's moving forward. So I don't know if this goes to policy or to Mr. Kirkner with the regional planning. I have no idea. It's just that this is a problem. And when I get asked about this by people, I don't have any ability to shut this down. And I have talked about it. So I feel completely powerless in my own town. And can you imagine all the people that ask me about it, how powerless they feel? So I don't know exactly what the appropriate course of action here is.
Mr. Crack, I think you can give us an update on our comp plan and everything else.
Sure. Well, there's two things, one already in motion, and certainly you alluded to Mr. Kirkner and regional. They are going through a review to add in West Pikeland, I believe it is, into the regional. And so there's the ability to address things like housing and other such things. So he may be able to take your voice to the regional and see what their perception of review would be and what changes might come out of that, if any. The second is, as I think I mentioned quite some time ago, the normal process doesn't mean the council can't do it in the interim, but the normal process in a long game like this is you start with your comprehensive plan and you redo that comprehensive plan. The previous plan was in the 70s. We did that review, updated it back in 2011, I believe it was. And we recently received grant funding from Chester County Vision Partnerships Program to update the comp plan yet again. This is our long look, 10, 15, 20 years out as to where does the borough want to be. Such things such as density, such things such as height, such things, transportation, et cetera. So we have started that process. That does not eliminate the opportunity for council in the interim, if it wanted to impose height restrictions in certain areas. That's a small change to the zoning. That is something that can be entertained. Currently in this district, the height maximum is 60 feet. Our building is currently 45 feet. The building that just got approved was between 48 and 60 feet, depending on which end of the building you're at. At that height, what's also imposed is a setback. So there's the intended purpose of the setback is to make it look such that it's not a sheer 60-foot wall. that there's a step back there. I don't know whether that architecture type works or not, but that's what's in our ordinance. So we are progressing. You have the ability to direct us to look at such things as height and lengths and all of that. We have done that a couple of times already since we revised our zoning. Please recognize that there are several plans that have been preliminarily approved that have not yet come to you as a final plan. Any changes that we would make today would not impact those plans.
Yeah, they're grandfathered in, I guess.
Yes, ma'am. Solicitor, Chuck, I'm not sure if you have anything to add to that statement.
No, you're correct in that, and the longer you wait to change your ordinance, the more chance you have plans coming in. Once they're filed under an ordinance, then they have some protection. So if you want to consider amendments to your zoning to address the issue, you probably should prioritize that as far as a time issue if you're concerned about that.
I'm incredibly concerned about that. So, but I don't know how other people feel about it. I just feel that we are slowly but surely giving away the character of this town with all of these big, high density monstrosities. They're huge. So I just don't think it's appropriate to do any more. We're good. We're good. But, and I know that's the feedback that I get from everybody that I talk to about it. So that's, I don't know I wouldn't know where to send it. Like, do we send it to, do I try to ask policy to take it? Do I ask Rich or Mr. Kirkner to take it? I don't know what to do here.
It would be for changes of zoning, it would come through policy.
Okay. Can I request that we have policy take a look at this? I know that they're getting a long list of things to look at right now, but.
So Dana, again, I think that's one of these things that when we have these conversations, there's not enough guidance here to understand like what your objections might be to send to policy. I think we would gladly take a look at it.
I think it's a terrible idea to have these big buildings that will have like the one that we just approved a little while ago that has like 500 and so, I think we're still in Borough Hall when we did this one. It was like 500 and something apartments. And I feel like those type of buildings do not fit here. They're like, they stand out. You can see them. They're just, the rest of this town doesn't look like that. So I don't know what you want me to like, are we supposed to have a separate meeting? Because this is getting a little long, but you know, as far as on this topic.
No, I guess I'm just trying to understand that. I feel like there's maybe some conflict to that statement because this building kind of similarly looks to some of the structures in that, on that same block, which is an extension of literally what.
Which one are we talking about? The one we're talking about right now? Or
the Bridge Street one. Yes.
This one. Well, this one isn't exactly what I'm talking about. With this one, it's just another, and I kind of feel like we should have the right to tell them to go and redo it just because the architecture is terrible, but that's just my opinion.
I don't think we get to legally apply style points though, right? I think that's the part of the problem.
We can have guidelines, not
right.
We can't legislate taste. But I think Mr. Soto and Mr. Dalton, if you want to add this at least as a discussion point to policy, it's something that can be generally discussed and see
I will happily show up to that
goes.
meeting and try to discuss what it was that what my issues are and everything. So if you could put that on the policy committee, I'd be happy to.
I mean, this is essentially what you're asking, Dana, is density.
Yeah.
It's adjusting the density of any given lot down. Maybe not height, but maybe that as well.
Well, the height too.
But, you know, if you don't want something like the Phoenix built again in this town, or the one up the block where the pool company is, whatever, the steel add suffix. I'm assuming it's density.
That's 100% what my concern is.
And you're proposing that we bump somehow that these, block or 2 block size developments have their density reduced to, row houses. So to recapture the character that you say that the borough has.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
All right. I think we might find some objection by the property owners. It's their property. And it's also.
Right, but if we change the rules, it doesn't, we change the rules, that's it. So.
I think this is something we can.
Yeah, I feel like we're like.
Send a policy and try to add some structure.
Well, all right. So anyways. I guess we have the motion on this preliminary final.
It's already been voted on. Yeah.
Yeah, you were just recapping
Yep.
and I was commenting
Okay.
like out of turn, I suppose, but
Okay.
I didn't know when else to do it.
We'll go back to the agenda on this and move to the hard board with Mr. Weiss.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I guess it would make sense if this is appropriate to discuss item 2B first, as it is directly related to the project at 348 Bridge Street that we were just discussing. Is it all right if I go a little out of order on the agenda?
Sure, if you want to make that as a motion.
All right. Yes. So I'd like to make a motion to consider the approval of the certificate of appropriateness for the demolition and new construction request for 348 Bridge Street as recommended 7-0 in Harb on September 4th.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Weiss, second by Ms. Berkeley. Questions on the motion pertaining to the harb on the building we were just discussing. I know this is much discussed in harb.
Yeah, Mr. President. Yeah, I have a comment. I'm looking at the rendering on the plan, and the wall along Bridge Street is a very long, unbroken wall of brick and glass. There's a door on the, what is that, the east end of the building, and then that's it. It's really monotonous. Just I don't know, just the whole look of this. It looks like the building across the street that Borough Hall is attached to, which is not a terribly attractive building. And I remember when the architect came back with a plan for Borough Hall that basically mimicked that building, I just said, you got to be kidding me, right? But there's the harb is supposed to give us some kind of reprise of a historical feel. And when I look at, this design, I don't know, I just don't see it. I just see a big block of windows and stone, and the brick I don't mind because I think that's in character, but it's just an ugly building. I mean, there's no other way to say it. It's just ugly. And
back on Harb's homework or policy's homework list is a review of Harb, since that has not been updated since its inception.
Yeah, but I really thought Harb would be able to exercise some more discretion in advising and shaping some of these buildings, and it just seems like
I can validate, Rich, that or Mr. Kirkner, that this is I think the latest of several versions of this building that went to Harb, and there was a lot of discussion and negotiation around materials, textures, layout, how various elements, architectural elements within it are found throughout the community already. So while it may not be initially evident, those conversations absolutely are happening at Harb, and we are seeing the results of those conversations in updated versions of this that now have met the bar to come before the council.
I still think it's a big, long, monotonous wall of brick and glass.
But it's shorter than our zoning ordinance allows, so it meets the threshold. Any other questions on the motion or on the project at hand? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion passes 6-2. Mr. Weiss, yes, Mr. Weiss.
Yes, and moving back up to item B1, I'd like to make a motion to consider the approval of the certificate of appropriateness for the installation of 2 black fabric awnings with signage over picture windows in front of 313 Bridge Street, as recommended in Harb 7-0.
Second.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Weiss, seconded by Ms. Berkeley. Questions on this motion? This is a bit simpler. Very good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes 8-0. Anything else, Mr. Weiss?
Nope, that'll be it from me. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Moving on to item C under boards and commissions, Mr. Kirkner with Regional Planning Committee.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. There's not too much going on there. We had another presentation from, what's the name of that group? The Phoenixville Area Clean Energy Alliance. And also moving forward on the expansion of the Regional Planning Committee, Regional Planning Group with another workshop on revisions to accommodate West Pikeland Township into the group. And there was also a sample ordinance brought to the committee about 5G communications, regulating 5G communications facilities. So I haven't gotten a close look at it yet, but it may be something we want to look at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have introduced our own 5G ordinance that was pertaining to where it's constructed and how. So I'm not sure if that's in addition to or superfluous of our current language. So we'll see what they come up with. Moving on, Ms. Dugan with Rec Board.
Yeah, just trying to unmute myself there. Okay, there's not all that much given the current situation. However, there's a lot of yoga. There's yoga and meditation for kids with Sheila K. Starting September 14th, and that's Tuesdays at 6 at Reeves Park, and that's for ages 5 to 12 for $10. There's yoga in the park that's been going on Thursdays at 6 at Reservoir Park. And there's a mini yoga festival to be held at Reservoir Park on Saturday, September 26th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at a cost of $30. And the day starts with 1.5 hour yoga practice and 3 instructors and 30-minute warm up. It's a whole big thing. On top of that, we have got this other program going on that we're starting where it's a family night out type of a thing but since we can't do that, we're just having voting on, hold on a second, I just think I lost the page. Oh no. It's a contest for families to participate in each monthly contest to engage families to participate with prizes awarded each month. What it is, it's like, it's going to be like age groups. And if you have a child that's school age, between like, there'll be the elementary school and then there'll be the middle school age, where if they did something that was, you want to write a paragraph or something to and submit it about somebody who did something that was helpful to the community in these trying times. It's just an award that we'd like to give out each month. So all the information would be on the website to get that to the appropriate person, and all the information you would need to do. So I hope people will participate in that, because I know there are a lot of kids that are, that are definitely contributing, and it would be nice to recognize them. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Dugan. And Mr. Soto with Beautification Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Beautification Advisory Commission meets due to the holiday meets next Monday. Nothing to.
That's a brief update. With that, we'll move on to updates from council committees. Ms. Barkley with Police Personnel.
Yes, regrettably, I'd like to make a motion to accept the resignation letter of Susan D. Churko from the Tree Advisory Commission. It was recommended in committee 3-0.
Second.
Questions on the motion for the resignation?
We can prepare a resolution to thank her for her time, correct, Mr.
Absolutely.
President?
We'll have that for next month. So motion by Ms. Berkeley, second by Mr. Soto. Questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes 8-0. Thank you, Ms. Berkeley. Anything else from police personnel this month?
No, we did meet earlier this month because the holidays we met on a Tuesday, but we will resume our regular first Monday schedule for October.
Very good. Mr. Soto with Parks and Rec.
No action to report coming out of Parks and Rec, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Dalton with Policy.
Yes, sir. How's my mic level? Good. You guys hear me?
Yeah,
yes,
you're good.
I haven't talked all meeting. 2 resolutions for me tonight, hopefully, or 2 motions. Sorry. I'd like to make a motion to consider scheduling and advertising a public hearing to consider an amendment to Chapter 15, which is motor vehicles and traffic, as recommended in committee 4-0. And Mr. Crack, if you could give a little bit of background on this for everybody, so I think this includes a little bit. It's like,
Should I second the motion first?
Sure.
Motion by Mr. Dalton, second by Ms. Berkeley, and Mr. Crack, if you want to, if there's a summary of that
Sure.
advertisement.
Yes, section 1 is amending the one-way road established. Interestingly enough, we have up on the north side, Oak Street from Heckle Street to Callow Hill, which is behind the Pico site over on the west end. Oak Street doesn't go that far. And interestingly enough, the direction of travel as identified in the zoning ordinance says it's counterclockwise. So I'm not sure what all that is, but we're fixing it to be Oak Street, from Heckle Street to Fremont Street in an east direction. The second section of that is stop intersections established. Since it also had Oak Street at Fremont and Dayton in the direction of west, we're changing that to Oak Street at Heckle Street east. That'll be the stop sign there. And then on Paradise Street at Montgomery, there's a bit of an issue there. There is currently a stop sign on Montgomery going east, but there's no stop sign at Paradise Street going north or south. Going south is where we want to put the sign. We can't make it a 3-way intersection because there is no land available to put a stop sign on Paradise Street on that side, but at least we'll get a 2-way stop at that. And that's really the most important, because if you know the area, there's foliage around the Warner Bus site there. So at least we get two stop signs located. And section 3 is the result of things that we learned by opening up Church Street when we closed down Bridge Street. we needed to push back the corners of Gay Street at Church. And so this section takes care of that. And we also, and that has to do with parking prohibited at all times. So that's at the intersection. And then parking limited in certain locations, certain days and certain hours on Gay Street on the west side between Church and Hall Street. There were previously 3 signs, but that created the problem of the above issue, which is a parking area too close to the interstate. I guess it'd be the southwest side of the intersection of Church and Gay. So this straightens that out, allows for 2 parking locations in that area. And that's it for that.
Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes 8-0.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. And for my second motion, I'd like to make a motion to consider scheduling and advertising a public hearing to consider an ordinance amendment to Chapter 23, which is stormwater management, as recommended in committee 4-0.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Dalton, second by Mr. Soto. This is pertaining, I believe we didn't have any language on stormwater for this type of application. So this is introducing new language. Okay, any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes 8-0. Anything else, Mr. Dalton?
Nothing further, sir.
Okay, moving along with our agenda, Mr. Weiss with ITT.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. No action to report at this time, though our next meeting is scheduled for 1 week from today, Tuesday, September 15th at 7 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. And moving on to our final committee, council committee, Ms. Dugan with Finance.
Just taking a quick look at this, I'm going to bundle all 5 of them. I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2020 prepaids dated 7/12/2020 to 8/14/2020 in the amount of $2,282,804.94. Approve the 2020 prepaids ACH dated 7/31/2020 in the amount of $17,203.14. Approve the 2020 prepaid credit card statement dated 7/12/2020 to 8/14/2020 in the amount of $133,570.56. And also to, well, actually, maybe I'll cut it off there for now.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Mr. Moore. Questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes 8-0. Ms. Dugan.
I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the 2021 minimum municipal obligation, otherwise known as the MMO, which we do every year.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Mr. Moore. Questions on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes 8-0. Ms. Dugan.
And finally, I'd like to make a motion to approve the budget increase 2020-012 in the amount of $10,000 from sanitation fund balance to solid waste pole building due to increase in cost to the building.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Mr. Moore. Questions on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes 8-0. Ms. Dugan, anything else?
That's all I have for tonight.
Okay. That concludes our updates from council, council action referred from council committees. With that, we will open up the second round of public participation. As I mentioned at the beginning of tonight's meeting, those of viewing on the public side through the website Phoenixville.org are able to post comments by logging in, providing their name and address through the live stream chat system. Should you like to make any comments tonight, please go ahead and do so. There is a slight lag, so we will take a moment here to wait to see if any comments come through. If you do make comment, staff will read your comments or questions aloud so that all of council can hear it.
Hey, Mr. Ewald, I do have two already. The first is from Ginger Murphy, a resident here in the borough. She said, especially with the extension of open air dining for restaurants with resulting Bridge Street closure and traffic detours, mitigation of detour traffic impact on residential neighborhoods is of a paramount importance. And she states that we also need parking enforcement more judiciously on Friday and Saturday night. I also received some public comment from Dr. David Senek for clarification for his item 9B. There was no direct discussion between himself and any representation of the borough. His understanding is that the variance appeals would stand as they are, and he is not removing any of the appeals with his application to the zoning hearing board.
Okay. Any other public comment tonight? My favorite part of the meeting, waiting for public comment.
At this time, Mr. President, I don't see anything else coming through.
Okay. If something else pops up in the next few moments, we can come back to it, but I believe we still have a little bit to go through in staff reports.
Certainly, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So with that, we will, if any members of the public are looking to make public comment, please go ahead and do so, and we can come back to it after we run through staff reports. With that, Mr. Crack, I believe under manager's report, you had some updates on timelines.
Yeah, I just want to, yes, Mr. President, I want to come back to, as you know, last month, council approved the moving forward with the bond as it relates to the rec center and the fire station. I believe it was Mr. Kirkner that asked if there was an opportunity to have further dialogue on that. We had mentioned that at the finance committee of August, there was an opportunity to do that, as well as the meeting tonight to have further dialogue on that. What I want to make sure that everybody understands is that it is our intent tomorrow to begin the process, barring anything from tonight. It is our intent to move forward with the process with Mr. Paulsini and Mr. Onkovic, moving forward with the official statement with Moody's to move into that process between now and our meeting of November 10th. On that date, it is intended that, assuming we're bondable and can draw down a bond, that we would put it out public auction that day, whether it's morning or afternoon, I don't know yet. And then that night would be the ordinance approving the bond. That ordinance then establishes all of the parameters of which we function. And then that sets in motion the tax ordinance for the December 8th council meeting, along with the rest of the budget process. So barring any further dialogue tonight, we have a motion to move forward from last month's meeting. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on the next steps. We begin engaging Moody's. At that point, we begin to engage the monies that are involved with that. Obviously, it's the fee structure is, as I understand, it's between 15 and 20K, so it's not something to be taken lightly. We've got a lot of work in front of us to do, but now we're entering into the real movement of bonding the recreation center and the fire station. So I have Mr. Onkovic available. I have Mr. Paulsini. I have Ms. Levinsky, myself. The rest of staff available to answer any other questions you might have short of us moving forward beginning tomorrow.
Any questions from council on the bond process? Okay, very good. Anything else, Mr. Crack?
I don't have anything else.
In your packets, we have the police, fire, planning, public works, finance, and human resources staff reports. If there's no questions on those reports, I don't believe we have any need for executive session tonight.
No.
Okay. With that, what is council's pleasure?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Berkeley, second by Mr. Moore. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you next month.
Take care, everybody.